I kind of changed. We're gonna spend 2 days on this, and then on Friday, we're gonna do a practice quiz, and Monday, we're gonna take a quiz, and then on Tuesday is your fast bridge. And for you guys, not to put a lot of pressure on you, but fast bridge does matter for you guys because you need, so next year you guys are going to go into advanced algebra 2. And then after that, we have our college math classes. And what you're trying to do is test into those college math classes. And one of the ways you can do that is your MCA test this year, and one of the ways is your fast bridge test. So you took one at the beginning of the year, I think, didn't we? Did we do it once? Yeah, and then we take it now, and then we take it at the end of this year. So they look at those 3 scores as well as your MCAs. And then next year as a 9th grader, you will also have 3 fast bridge scores too. Okay? All right, so like I said, we are going to switch gears today. We're getting into chapter 7. And your practice quiz tomorrow is gonna have what we've learned since Christmas break, okay? So it'll have rhombi, squares, trapezoids, kites, as well as what we do Wednesday and Thursday. Same thing with your quiz on Monday. So the next chapter that we are doing is on proportions, and we get into similar triangles. And to do similar triangles, you need to know how to solve proportions. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna learn how to solve one of the harder types of proportions where we have to factor. You may have done this before. I'm gonna show you a little bit different way to factor that you may have learned, and then we'll go from there, okay? So you're gonna get a proportion, and what we're gonna do first is just like you, and if I were you, I would take notes and do these along with me today. I wouldn't just watch. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do cross products. So we're gonna go x times x plus 10 equals negative 21 times 1, which is negative 21. Okay? Then, once we get that, we're gonna distribute this x. So x times x is x squared. X times 10 is 10x. And then to save time, what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring this negative 21 over to that side because of the fact that what we're gonna do is factor these, and we want everything on one side. So I'm gonna bring a negative 21 over, so it's gonna be positive 21, and then it's equal to 0, okay? Now, what factoring is we're gonna break this down into 2 binomials. It's called, this is a trinomial because it has 3 terms. We're gonna break it into 2 binomials because then we can solve it, okay? So what I'm gonna do, and like I said, this is probably different than what you guys learned in your algebra class last year. But what we do is we take this x squared and we put it in this box right here. We take this number with its sign if it's negative, okay? And we put that here as well as here. So if it were negative, we'd bring that sign with it. And then this number along with the sign goes here. So this is positive, so we just write 10. Okay? Now, what we try to do is think of two numbers that multiply to give us 21, and when we add them, it gives us 10. Okay, so I'll give you an example. 1 times 21 equals 21, but 1 plus 21 is 22, so that does not work. What's another two numbers that give us 21? 7 and 3, right? So if I go 7 times 3, that's 21. 7 plus 3 is 10. Okay, so those two are our factors. Now, this is what we do. We put one of those, it doesn't matter which one, in this box, and we add an X to it. We take the other one and we put it in this box and we add an X to it. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're gonna look at what times what gives us X squared. And in our cases in this class, it's always gonna be X times X gives you X squared, okay? That's always gonna be the case. And then we're gonna look at what times X would give us 7X. That's just 7, okay? Then you're looking at X times what gives you 3X. That is 3. And now this and this become binomial factors for what we're doing. If that was a -7, you'd think of it as X minus 7. If there's no sign in between, we think of it as plus, okay? So if there's no sign in between, we add a plus sign. Now, we take one of those factors and put it down here. We take one of those factors and put it here, and then we have to go ahead and solve it, okay? So here's what we would do. We would think, okay, X plus 7 has to equal 0, and X plus 3 has to equal 0. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is solve this by subtracting 7, and X equals -7. And then here I'm gonna subtract 3, and X equals -3. These are the answers of that. Okay? I'm gonna show you a shortcut way to do this last step. And I kind of hesitate to do that because what happens sometimes is, well, I'll explain it first and then I'll explain what kids do. If you have X plus 7 equals 0, your answer is going to be the opposite of this. So if this is plus 7, it's going to be -7. Here, if this is plus 3, your answer is going to be -3, okay? It's just the opposite of that. But what happens is kids will, I don't even know how they do it, but they kind of like skip a step, or maybe they forget to take the opposite of it. But when I get like your quizzes next week, what happens is I get kids that have the opposite signs on both of these. So once you have your two factors, okay, your answers are the opposite of each of those, okay? All right, so now let's go to our second page here, and let's do the same thing. So we're gonna multiply here, and we get X times X minus 3 equals 14 times 2, which is 28. Then we're gonna distribute. So I distribute that X, and I get X squared minus 3X. And then, do you remember what we did with the 28? Brought it over, and you have to switch the sign of it when you bring it over. Switch its sign. Okay? Then, do you guys remember what goes here? X squared. What goes here? Yep, negative 28. You bring the sign with it. Negative 28 also goes here. And what goes here? Negative 3. Okay? Now, when it's negative, that means one of your numbers for multiplying is going to be positive. One's going to be negative. Okay? Just a little hint, if this one is also negative, what that means is your bigger factor, like if you went 10 times 2, your bigger factor would be the negative 1, okay? Can you guys think of two numbers that multiply to give you a negative 28 and add to give you a negative 3? 7 and 4, which one would be negative? The 7, right? So this right here is going to be negative 7 times 4. That gives me negative 28, and negative 7 plus 4 gives me a negative 3, okay? So again, because this is negative, one has to be negative. Because your answer is negative, that tells you the bigger number has to be negative. So now I'm going to make one of these negative 7x and one of these 4x, and it doesn't matter which one you put where. And then, do you guys remember what I put here and here? X and x. So then I think, what times x is negative 7x? That's negative 7. X times what is 4x? That's 4. And negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. Okay? Now if I come down here, one of these is x minus 7. Wouldn't this one be x plus 4 because it doesn't have a sign? And then if you use the shortcut way, what would this x be? Positive 7, and this would be negative 4. And those are your answers. Okay? Here, I'll grab you the notes. Here you go. Okay, so now let's go to our third one. And again, we're doing cross products, but this one is different because we have what's called a binomial multiplied by a binomial. Okay, so what we have here is x plus 3, and we're going to put that in parentheses, times x plus 2 in parentheses, equals 1 times 2, which is 2. Now, do you guys remember FOIL from algebra? Did you learn, like, F stands for first, O stands for outside, inside is I, and last? Did you guys learn that? Yeah. Everybody got that? Okay. When we use that is when you have two different parentheses, each of which has 2 terms in it, okay? The F stands for first. What that means is take the first thing here times the first thing there. So you'd go x times x, which is x squared. The O stands for outside. So that would be this and this, the outside 2. X times a positive 2 is going to be plus 2x. Then we have inside, which would be these two. Positive 3 times x is plus 3x. And then L for last are these two. 3 times 2 is going to be 6. And then what you do is you bring your 2 over to the other side. When you bring that 2 over, do you guys all agree it would be negative 2? Okay. Now we're going to combine like terms. So I have x squared. These two I can combine. When they're on the same side, you don't change signs at all. So 2x plus 3x is just 5x. Over here, I'm combining terms again. 6 minus 2 is 4, and that equals 0. Now, one thing I want to tell you is as you're going today, and as you're doing this on a quiz, you may come across a problem that you can't factor. You can't figure it out. Then what you would do is look back at your work, because every one of these can be factored. So if you did something wrong in this work, that would give you a reason not to be able to factor it. So now what I'm going to do, remember the x squared goes here. The 4 goes here as well as here. And then that 5 goes here. Now, we have to decide what terms, what two numbers multiply to give us 4 and add to give us 5. What is it? 4 and 1. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. Okay? So that means one of these is 4x, one of these is 1x. And then I decide what to put here and here. Every time this is going to be x squared, and this is going to be x, and that's going to be x. Then, to get 4x, this is going to be 4 because 4 times x gives me 4x. And then x times 1 gives me 1x. And 4 times 1 is 4. When there's no signs in between, you put a plus. Okay? So, one of our factors is x plus 4. And one of our factors is x plus 1. Then, to solve these, you take the opposite of that. If that's plus 4, your answer is negative 4. This is plus 1, your answer is negative 1. Okay. Do you guys remember last year going like from this to 2 parentheses? Do you remember factoring like that? Do you think you did that? Did you do like a table like this? You did. Kind of the same way? Okay, good. All right, now we have 3 more to do. So let's look at this one. We're going to multiply this. And we have x plus 3 times x minus 2 equals 3 times 8, which is 24. Okay? Now we are going to do FOIL again. The f of FOIL is first. So it's the first thing here times the first thing here, which is x squared. The O is outside, which is x times a negative 2, which is negative 2x. The I is inside, which is these two, so that's plus 3x. And then the L is last, so it'd be 3 times a negative 2, which is negative 6. And then that 24 is going to come over to the left side, and it's negative 24, and that equals 0. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is combine these, because I have to combine my like terms. Remember, we don't change signs at all when they're on the same side. Negative 2x plus 3x is plus x. Negative 6 minus 24 is a negative 30, and that equals 0. Okay? Now, I put x squared here. I put my negative 30 here as well as here. And then if there's nothing in front of that x, what do we assume it is? 1, yes. So we put that here. So we have a negative. That means you're gonna have a positive and a negative. And if this answer is positive, that means the bigger number should be positive, okay? Can you guys think of 2 factors of negative 30 that give us 1? Negative 5 and a positive 6. Negative 5 and a positive 6 gives us negative 30. Negative 5 plus 6 gives us 1, okay? So what happens next is I put a negative 5 with x in one of these. I put a 6 with x in the other one, okay? Now we're gonna decide what goes here and here. If that's x squared, it's x times x. What times x gives me negative 5x? That's a negative 5. X times what gives me 6x? That's 6. There's no sign here, so it's plus. And again, if you struggle finding factors, that should tell you to look back over this work, because they can be factored. So 1 is x minus 5, 1 is x plus 6. So my answers would be the opposite of that. So the opposite of negative 5 is 5. The opposite of plus 6 is negative 6. Whoops. Okay. All right. Now let's go to this one. So first we're gonna do cross products. So I have x minus 5 times x minus 1 equals 8 times 4, which is 32. Remember, it's first, outside, inside, last. That's what FOIL is, okay? First would be the x times x, which is x squared. O is outside, so that's your outside 2. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. I is inside, that's these two. So negative 5 times x is negative 5x. And L is last, so that would be negative 5 times negative 1, which is plus 5, and that equals 32. Okay. Now, oh, and usually I bring that 32 over, so I'm gonna do that now too. When I bring that 32 over, it's negative, and then we can set that equal to 0. So now I have x squared. Negative 1x minus 5x is negative 6x. 5 subtract 32 is negative 27, and that equals 0. So if I come back over here, this is x squared, this is negative 27, this is negative 27, and my answer is, and this is negative 6. Can you guys think of 2 numbers that multiply to give us negative 27 and add to give us negative 6? Yes, a negative 9 times 3, right? Equals negative 27, and negative 9 plus 3 gives us negative 6. So now what I'm going to do is put a negative 9x in one of these and a 3x in the other one. That is x squared. So for x squared, I'm going to get x and x. Then I have negative 9x. So what times x gives me negative 9x? That's minus 9. X times what gives me 3x? That's 3. Negative 9 times 3 is negative 27. Okay? Here, you're going to put a plus sign in between, because there was nothing. So now one of my factors is x minus 9, one is x plus 3, and that equals 0. And then when you go to do your actual answer, x is the opposite of each of these, so it's 9 and a negative 3. Okay. All right, now we're going to do one more. So if I look at this one, I'm going to multiply these, and I get x plus 5 times x minus 2 equals 30. Okay? Remember, FOIL is first, outside, inside, last. And so the F for first is x times x, which is x squared. The outside is x times a negative 2, which is negative 2x. Inside are these two, which is 5x. And last is 5 times a negative 2, which is negative 10. And then we bring the 30 over, which is minus 30, and that equals 0. Okay, now we have to combine like terms. So what I'm going to do is combine these. Negative 2x plus 5x is plus 3x. Negative 10 minus 30 is negative 40. And then we're going to put them over here. So I have x squared, I have negative 40 and negative 40, and my answer would have to be 3. So we're going to think of two factors that give us negative 40 so that they add up to a positive 3. So the bigger number is going to be your positive 1. What would that be? 8 and a negative 5, because 8 plus a negative 5 is 3, okay? So one of these is 8x, one is negative 5x. And then for x squared, we put x times x. This would be an 8, this would be a negative 5. We'd have a plus there. So one of them would be x plus 8. One would be x minus 5. And then for your answers, here x would be a negative 8 and x would be a positive 5. Okay? So if we look at Schoology, there should be a link to the worksheet for today. Oops, no. Okay, so I don't think, oh, I did. I made copies so that, for today, so that you guys would have those charts and stuff, so I did make copies today. And then there was a key to this, okay? So you actually don't have